The historic indictment of former President Donald Trump has Colorado's Republican leaders quickly coming to his defense and Colorado's Democrats talking about the importance of the justice process. The specific charges are still under seal, but they're related to the 2016 hush money payments made to two women, including porn star Stormy Daniels. Both women claimed that they were paid to be quiet about affairs with Trump. The Democratic DA in Manhattan is focused on whether Trump or his team committed crimes in arranging the payments or covering them up. Trump is expected to surrender to authorities next week. We reached out to half a dozen Colorado Democrats in Congress, all of whom were unavailable to speak with next. On social media, Democratic Representatives Jason Crow and Diana DeGette echoed the same message, that the indictment shows that no one is above the law. The Colorado Republican Party and some key GOP leaders in this state are sticking by Trump despite the indictment. State GOP Chair Dave Williams said this afternoon that the indictment is interference in Trump's 2024 run for president. Colorado's most prominent Republican, Congresswoman Lauren Boebert, said that the charges are a, quote, weaponization of our justice system. And former Mesa County Clerk Tina Peters, longtime Trump ally, compared her current indictment to Trump's.
You know, I'm not surprised, Kyle. This is the avenue that the left chooses to go down. They use the same tactic with me. You know, I think they have a pretty weak case, but that's not the purpose of this indictment, Kyle. The purpose of it is to discourage the voters from voting for him.
As Peters awaits trial on felony charges of election system tampering, we learned this afternoon that the Colorado Republican Party has offered Peters an official role in an election integrity function. I asked Peters about President Trump's warnings and those of a conservative leader in our state suggesting that there could be violence as a result of the indictment. We'll get into that in tonight's next conversation in a moment. We're also keeping an eye on some wildfires that have led to evacuations this afternoon. The concern is that the strong winds we've seen all over the states could turn small fires into a big problem. A fire burning in El Paso and Elbert counties has led to the evacuation of the small town of Simla, about 600 people between Lyman and Monument along Highway 24. Elizabeth Fire says that particular wildfire has not destroyed any buildings at this point. They're estimating it's about 700 to 800 acres and 50% contained. They've opened up a shelter at the Elbert County Fairgrounds in Kiowa. There are also evacuations for a fire burning up in Park County, about 8 miles south of Lake George in Florissant. That fire has burned 70 acres so far. Evacuations include parts of Park and Teller counties, including the Wilson Lakes and Forest Glen areas. They are unable to get air support on that fire. Can't fly because of the wind. Let's check in with Danielle for the latest on the fire danger. We knew this was going to be an issue today, Danielle.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Kyle, we still have another 24 hours to go. The winds are going to be fairly strong for us again tomorrow. Tomorrow temperatures, however, will be a bit cooler. We've already seen 40 to 50 mile per hour gusts around the heart of the city, and they still are going strong at this 6 o'clock hour. Up into the foothills, also looking at those strong winds, 48 mile per hour gusts howling across Broomfield. In Aurora, Centennial, too, we zoom across the eastern plains, and they also are dealing with the winds. Look at southeastern Colorado, 56 mile per hour gusts charging in from the south around Springfield. That really is where the worst of it is. The red flag warning will continue until 8 o'clock tonight and then go back into effect around lunchtime tomorrow, continuing until 7 o'clock. These winds easily 55, 60 miles per hour. Plus that high wind warning also in place from Colorado Springs to the south, down trees, down power lines, and of course these fires that have already sparked could potentially grow fairly fast. It's a tale of two sides of the mountains, really. Out to the west, we're dealing with heavy snowfall coming in, plus some strong winds out there. It means blowing and drifting snow, limiting visibility for folks. As we look out there, they're also under advisories for potentially 6 to 18 inches of snowfall coming through by tomorrow afternoon. The Park, the Elkhead Mountains, about 8 to 16 inches out there. As we look at the future cast, maybe a couple of isolated showers late tonight across northern Colorado. Otherwise, we wake up to mostly sunny skies tomorrow. By the afternoon, the winds still will be charging across the eastern plains, and that snowfall finally winding down late tomorrow night. I mentioned the cold front that drives through. That's going to mean our temperatures will be back into the mid-50s after a day in the upper 60s today. We should rebound quite nicely for the weekend. The sunshine is back, the heat is back, but unfortunately so are the winds, especially Sunday and into Monday before another round of snow arrives midweek.
Thank you, Danielle. 2 years plus past the insurrection at the U.S. Capitol, another Coloradan has just been arrested for his alleged role. Court filings say that 49-year-old Jonathan Grace from Colorado Springs was one of the people violently clashing with Capitol Police that day. He's facing charges that include felonies. Investigators say that Grace is seen on video in the lower West Terrace tunnel. That's a narrow entryway that leads right into the heart of the Capitol. On camera, they say he's seen pushing against the police line and then using his body as a blockade as officers tried to clear the tunnel of rioters. Court documents say that Grace only retreated after Capitol officers sprayed the group with something like pepper spray. New campaign finance complaints say that Denver mayoral candidate Lisa Calderon illegally coordinated with some progressive candidates for city council, including Councilwoman Candy Tabaka. The complaints allege that the candidates violated the city's fair election rules as well as city code when they shared resources that were provided by third-party groups. One of the complaints comes from one of Tabaka's opponents, Quan Atlas. Atlas says that Tabaka received polling information from a nonprofit called Emerge Colorado. It was a nonprofit run by Calderon. Anonymous claims of election coordination by progressive candidates have been aggressively circulated to political reporters for weeks. These formal complaints are the first time that anybody has put their name to the accusations against Calderon and others. Her team said that the claims are, quote, false and overblown. Tabaka's team said the claims against her are baseless. They have 30 days for a formal response before this may go to a hearing. Democrats at the state capitol want more state government control over what housing goes where. A bill would prevent the state's largest cities from limiting the construction of multifamily housing like duplexes and let more housing be built near transportation. Our Luis De Leon takes a closer look.
Overall, the proposed plan allows for more construction of housing across Colorado, but is limited depending on population and housing needs. The plan breaks down what's allowed into sections. Let's start with Tier 1. They're the state's largest cities like Denver, Aurora, and Boulder. Among other things, municipalities would have to allow the construction of multifamily housing near public transit. That's something that Conservation Colorado, an environment advocacy organization, is particularly in support of.
Transportation is the #1 source of greenhouse gas pollution. And so people driving, because they can't afford to live where they want to live, increases pollution and it increases congestion.
Tier 2 are places like Berthoud and Fort Lupton. They would be prohibited from restricting construction of what's called accessory dwelling units. Then there's rural resort job centers, which are basically ski towns like Silverthorne, Steamboat Springs, and others. That basically looks to tackle the issue of housing for those who work in the town but can't afford to live there. And non-urban municipalities are for real small towns like Alamosa, or towns that are not already in the first 3 categories. They're the only group not required to submit some sort of housing needs plan to the state.
Municipalities largely have the same goals as the proponents.
Kevin Baumer is executive director of the Colorado Municipal League. He opposes the bill and believes it takes too much power away from local governments.
We just don't start with preemption. We'd rather start with partnership. In the 9 months preceding the legislative session, we could have been talking how all of the municipalities and counties could have been working together with the state in partnership towards common goals.
Now, when we take a look at how this works elsewhere, the Urban Institute, for example, they recently looked at zoning reforms across the country in a study that they've just recently published. They found a 0.8% increase in housing supply within those first 3 to 9 years of those reforms passing. Kyle, though, they note that, however, that the increase occurs predominantly for units at the, quote, higher end of rent prices.
Let's talk about the likelihood that this passes. As we've said so many times, Democrats have the votes to pass whatever they want at the state capitol as long as they don't end up divided on an issue. But this is clearly an issue that splits off some city Democrats.
And it really also depends then with how those other local governments may be vocal after seeing this plan. When it comes to the actual residents of Colorado, different statewide polls will tell you different things. Healthier Colorado showed that 80% of folks that they polled here statewide are in support of what's called those accessory dwelling units.
Luis De Leon, thank you. What do you think the chances are that you and or Donald Trump are in prison a year or 2 from now?
Trump ally Tina Peters says she and the former president are being persecuted as well as prosecuted. I'll ask her whether violence is a possibility after Trump's indictment. Next.
Our next conversation tonight is with one of Colorado's top Donald Trump allies. Former Mesa County Clerk Tina Peters has been offered a formal role with the state Republican Party while she awaits trial on charges that she tampered with voting systems. Peters maintains her innocence and that of former President Trump, who joined her today in the club of indicted former elected officials. Donald Trump warned of death and destruction if he faces criminal charges. Do you have any insight on that? Who's going to be doing the killing? Who's going to be doing the destroying?
You know, it's interesting because with just the recent shooting with the trans activists, we see that death and destruction, that people are out there speaking of and promoting death and destruction. It's on every channel that you can find if you're not watching, excuse me, Kyle, mainstream media. But, you know, Republicans and people that are that adore Donald Trump are peace-loving people.
Your political ally, Joe Oltmann, who has called for the mass hangings of his political opponents, said recently, if they indict Trump, there are no rules and we have no choices except one. Do you know what that means?
No, I don't. I haven't heard him say that.
Okay.
I mean, you might want to ask him for that. But, you know, I think that, you know, when you see the treasonous acts by this administration, you know, you have to call into account these judges. You know, Soros has funded judges. I mean, that's proven in campaign finance, funded Secretary of State, did the Secretary of State, coalition. So, you know, it's the people that are funding and promoting these people, and they're not friends of our country. They want a globalist society. They don't want us to be sovereign.
What do you think the chances are that you and or Donald Trump are in prison a year or two from now?
Well, I'll tell you, if I thought I was going to prison, I would probably be on the beach somewhere, but you know, relaxing. It's just like with Donald Trump's indictment. My indictment has nothing to do with the facts.
My full 10-minute conversation with Tina Peters from this afternoon will be posted on the next YouTube channel and on 9news.com. Colorado's House Democrats once again deployed a formerly rarely used rule to limit debate and to keep the Republican minority at the Capitol from slowing down their legislation. It's the fourth time they've done it this week.
Pursuant to House Rule 14, I move that the time for debate on Senate Bill 190 be limited to 8 hours.
Prior to this weekend, it had been decades since you'd heard that at the Capitol. That there was Democratic House Majority Leader Monica Duran preemptively limiting debate over a Democratic bill to regulate advertising from so-called crisis pregnancy centers. One of the things that those organizations do is market medically unfounded procedures they call abortion reversals. The bill would make it illegal to advertise those procedures unless there is widespread medical approval. It would also keep the centers from pretending like they provide abortions, an effort to lure in pregnant clients to dissuade them from having an abortion. Republicans have called those measures extreme. They've argued that Democrats are abusing Rule 14 to silence them. Democrats used Rule 14 to limit debate on a number of gun bills over the weekend, and they've said that they will consider using it on a case-by-case basis for the rest of the session.
Everything is sound until it's unwanted, and that's the definition of noise.
Raising a racket on the courts. Several cities in Colorado are restricting pickleball. That's next.
Quick update on the wildfire we've been monitoring in Simla, out along Highway 24 between Lyman and Monument. Firefighters have lifted the evacuation orders for Simla as they get a better handle on that fire. We'll continue to post updates on 9news.com. Perhaps you, like me, thought that pickleball it's a fun little sport enjoyed mostly by older people. Oh no, it's a menace. If you ask the neighbors who hate the noise and the governments who are moving to limit where pickleball can be played. Denver Parks and Rec is shutting down a court in Congress Park, dropping plans for a new one near Sloan's Lake. A city in the suburbs just put a 6-month ban on new pickleball courts. Our Steve Steger looks into what's causing such a, forgive me, racket.
Pickleball is the country's fastest growing sport.
If the continued rate of growth continues, by 2030 there'll be 40 million people playing pickleball, which will surpass any sport in the U.S.
Spend an hour in this court in Congress Park, it'll be easy to tell.
This is a crazy amount of people for a Thursday morning.
This is a light day.
It's busy. Busy and noisy.
The paddles that we use are carbon fiber, and the ball, it just has a 71 decibel sound.
Mark Nelson runs the Congress Park Pickleball Club and knows this sport is loud.
I get constant updates from my watch that I'm in a loud environment.
You don't have to tell the people who live here either.
It's just a very percussive sound. You can't ignore it.
Betsy Roomley lives way down the block and still hears it.
It's just a a pinging, and it's just constant from, about mid-morning to at night. Last night I heard it right before going to bed.
Betsy and a group of her neighbors have complained to the city for a while now, enough that the city sent out an inspector.
Just yesterday at this property, we had 64.6 decibels, which is almost 10 decibels over.
The legal limit is 55 decibels.
Once something bothers you and gets under your skin, that's all you can hear. That's all you can think about. And it really just doesn't go away.
Simply put,
it's a racket.
Which puts the Parks Department in a bit of a pickle.
Clearly, along these homes on this site, it is violating the noise ordinance.
Scott Gilmore is the deputy director of Parks and Rec. He says he sat with neighbors and heard the noise himself.
Doc, 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 doc. I got it on my phone. You want to hear it?
Originally, Gilmore planned to move the courts further away from homes. Now he's just getting rid of them in Congress Park.
It would be irresponsible for me to bring back pickleball to this park. But let's find the right park to put pickleball so pickleballers can have their own space.
It could take years to find and build the right spot, leaving Nelson and his fellow pickleballers without some options.
It's not going to stop. We're going to play.
Continuing to argue their sport is worth all the noise.
There's good and bad for everything. There's 80 people getting exercise and building the community and getting to know each other and living in the world we want to live in, right? It says 80 strangers just not doing anything.
So down south, in my city of Centennial, they just passed a 6-month moratorium on building new outdoor pickleball courts. That's until they can study the noise associated with these. Scott Gilmore told me the guidance he's gotten is to keep these courts at least 500 feet away from homes. Typical city block is about, 311 or so feet? Think about that. It's like almost 2 city blocks away from a home. You got a lot of neighborhood parks in Denver. It's going to be hard to find a spot that's that far away. They've got a couple of options. They're looking at Burns Park at the corner of Colorado and Alameda.
Okay.
That might potentially be one. Maybe the noise will just kind of like
shift over there.
Flow into Glendale.
I did not expect the pickleballers to be quite as militant as they were about it.
I mean, this sport is incredibly popular.
Yeah.
And you've got a group of 1,000 or more than 1,000 people who are part of that group alone. They say that there are some days they've got like 400 people on that small court in Congress Park. They're planning a big get-together on Sunday, which is the last day it's open.
Man, picturing them all walking down the street together with the paddle. Thwack, thwack.
We're coming for you. We want more. They want more.
Yikes. Thanks, Steve. A bunch of you think we messed up bad tonight, but that's what feedback's for. Next. Feedback is fiery tonight. Randy says, unbelievable that you gave Tina Peters a bullhorn. Penny, I am disappointed to see Next giving election denier Tina Peters a platform. Rennie asked the simplest question, why do you give Tina Peters airtime? For this reason, Rennie, and everybody else, because she represents a sizable mindset among Colorado Republicans. She's headed for a leadership role with the Colorado Republican Party and has a not insignificant following. It's the same reason that we had Ayante Anderson on this program earlier in the week. A lot of folks told us he shouldn't have been on our air, but he has a following and a point of view. It's up to you to decide what you think of him. See you next time.